Graduates, at this time, it is my privilege to introduce your commencement speaker, Dr. Josh Anderson. Dr. Josh Anderson, who is now in his 19th year of teaching, is a proud Baker University alum. He earned a Master of Science in School Leadership in 2001 and a Doctor of Education in Educational Leadership in 2014. Dr. Anderson was honored as the 2007 Kansas Teacher of the Year and 2007 runner-up for the National Teacher of the Year. He has been inducted into several educational halls of fame and has been profiled prominently in books on education. He is the 2015 National Debate Coach of the Year and the 2016 NFHS Outstanding Speech, Debate, and Theater Teacher. Dr. Anderson serves as the Director of Speech and Debate at Olathe Northwest High School, where he has coached national championship teams in policy debate, and his program ranks in the top 10 out of over 8,000. Dr. Anderson is also routinely called on by governors, federal legislators, and state education commissioners as a trusted policy advisor and educational advocate. Certainly it is an honor for me, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce you to Dr. Josh Anderson.
Well, good afternoon, graduates, families, and friends. You know, when I graduated with my doctorate a few years ago, the graduation speaker was Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak's wife. And she had a really important message, probably. But like all of you sitting here today, I spent most of my time during graduation thinking about the bagpipes. And I spent my time thinking about what it must like to be the wife of a multimillionaire. Now, I certainly mean no disrespect to her. She really did have a terrific message. It's just that graduation speakers often have a way of making us dream and wonder about when the speech will end. And so here I am. Well, I'm not a multimillionaire, but I am a multi-hundredaire. So listen up, because I've got something important to say, probably. You know, I want to use our time today to focus on leadership, because that is a very popular thing to talk about these days. Our culture values leadership. Indeed, many of you are graduating from programs centered on leadership. And as an alum of one of these programs, I know just how prepared each of you is to lead in your respective professions. So let's try this title on together, like a garment as fine as the one all of you are wearing today. Let's see how this fits. There are many who call themselves leaders simply because of the position they hold at work or the beliefs that they hold in their heart. But calling yourself as a leader is a little like calling yourself physically fit. Just because you say it doesn't make it true. And what's more, the people around you know when you are just kidding yourself. And just as there are measurable benchmarks to tell you whether or not you are truly physically fit, there are also measurable benchmarks to tell you whether you are truly a leader. So I'd like to spend our short time today talking about just one of these leadership benchmarks. And I'd like to go a bit further and suggest that this particular benchmark is shamefully underrepresented in too many of our leaders today. Perhaps this critical aspect of leadership has gone out of style, or maybe it has simply become an inconvenient wrinkle in the face of democracy. Nevertheless, I do not believe any of us can call ourselves leaders until we have embraced one important leadership standard in both word and deed. Gandhi once wrote, "A nation's greatness is measured by how it treats its weakest members." Malcolm Forbes tells us that you can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. Mother Teresa paraphrased to say, "It is a poverty to decide that a child must suffer so that you may live as you wish." And Franklin Delano Roosevelt notes that the test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have too much, it is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. And I must beg to add one final quotation from the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." You know, it's easy for me to find inspirational quotes from memorable leaders on compassion for those who have the least. I could find no such quotes from any leader on the importance of compassion for those who have the most. Perhaps it is true that those who desire to lead only the successful are those who are the easiest to forget. And so I ask each of you today to think upon what it is that you, as a leader, will do for those who have the least, for those who can offer you nothing, for those who suffer and for those who have too little. And if we are silent about the things that matter, then our silence tells us who we really are. Our silence does not make them matter less. It makes us matter less. And so I say to you today that when we use our tongues and hands and pens and hearts to ease the burdens of those who cannot change the system or their fate, only then can we wear these robes of leadership. Today is a day to celebrate warm hearts. I know that your rite of passage across this stage unlocks opportunities previously unavailable. I know it opens those dreams for you that you have for yourself and who you want to be when you grow up, no matter how old you are. You know, I knew in 6th grade that I wanted to be a teacher. That was mostly because I couldn't wrestle control of the classroom away from Mrs. Allen. So I vowed that one day I would have a classroom of my own to control. I still don't. Knowing early in life who you want to be is a powerful thing. It shapes you early and focuses you. It feels like destiny. So imagine how I felt the day I was told I couldn't and wouldn't be a teacher. I was a sophomore in college and I just received my score on an admissions test to the teacher education program at a university different than this one. 3 points short on the writing section. The grizzled old man who believed in rigor and standards and high expectations for all explained to me that he was doing me a favor, that he could tell that I was not going to be a very good teacher. And this program was not about accepting substandard students, and this university was not about producing substandard teachers like me. I remind you, said Mr. Forbes, you can easily judge the character of a man by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. And in that moment, I could do nothing for him. You see, in any human system, economic or sociological, you cannot have the successful without the unsuccessful. You cannot have the rich without the poor, the makers without the takers, the winners without the losers, the wheat without the chaff. And so I ask you again today to reflect as a leader how you will treat those who struggle and those who fail to make the cut. What is your stance on second chances? Said Mr. Roosevelt, the test of our progress is not whether we add more to the abundance of those who have too much. It is whether we provide enough for those who have too little. It is certainly true that there are those who don't want to try, those who don't care, and those who have given up. But we must never confuse the lazy few with the much larger portion of our fellow Americans who still dream and still try and yet still struggle. Yet the narrative of the lazy bum who games the system serves as an all too convenient excuse for attending to the needs of those who have the most. But it is not the lazy bum who suffers. It is our children and our hardest working families. Said Mother Teresa, it is a poverty to decide that a child must suffer so that you may live as you wish. Can you imagine your own child struggling to learn in a classroom where the teacher believed that those who fail must just be lazy? Think about the lifelong consequences of your struggling child being treated like the wrong end of a bell curve at a time when she needed help the most. Think about the teacher who prides herself on high standards that leave your child behind. And just as every teacher has an obligation to help every student, every leader has an obligation to tend to the unsuccessful, the poor, the takers, the chaff. Never convince yourself that there is nothing you could do, and shame on those who think there is nothing that they should do, because every once in a while, you're going to run into a loser like me, someone who doesn't make the cut or meet the standard, but who still wants to try. So there I was, sitting in the office of the Associate Dean at the School of Education, and she sat across from me, having reviewed my request for reconsideration. I had spent too much time on extracurriculars, and by that I mean beer. Too little on academics. My GPA was an embarrassment, my grades were worse, and this university prided itself on producing high-quality professionals that schools could hire without question. Despite the fact that everything in my heart said I wanted to be a teacher, it seemed that nothing about my choices reflected any sort of measurable commitment to the goal itself. If I would get serious, she would reconsider. If I would make the commitment that this profession requires, she would allow me to become a teacher. And so I did. I made the commitment. I wrote her a letter when I graduated to thank her. I wrote her a letter when I got my first teaching job and when I finished my first year of teaching. I wrote her a letter when my staff nominated me for the Building Teacher of the Year and then State Teacher of the Year. runner-up for National Teacher of the Year, and earning my doctorate in education, and then National Debate Coach of the Year. It wasn't about the honors, it was about honoring a promise. And today, I'd like to add one more letter to the list. Call it fate, call it fortune, but she now works and leads at Baker University, and she is here with us today. So I would like to thank our interim provost, Dr. Tess Mehring, for believing that I could be worthy of the title of teacher. Dr. Mehring, you opened a closed door for me the way that these diplomas will open up closed doors for all of our graduates today. Your leadership 22 years ago, when I was at my weakest, changed the entire trajectory of my life. You made a difference, and I thank you. But there is a larger lesson here. Let us recognize that saying no would have been better for Dr. Mehring. She would have better preserved the system. She would have better protected the university's reputation. She would have used tough love to teach me that hard work pays off, and she would have given me that opportunity to pull myself up by my bootstraps so that I could be proud of overcoming my failures in life. And these are exactly the things we sometimes tell ourselves when we want to convince ourselves and others that marginalizing the weakest among us is somehow ethical or acceptable. I cannot stand here and remain silent on this matter because I mattered and the marginalized matter, and decent people lead with grace and compassion and dignity. And the moment you turn your back on the weakest among us is the moment you no longer matter because 250 years of American progress ends at your closed door. Said Gandhi, a nation's greatness is measured by how it treats its weakest members. And so to all of you, I ask you to think about the people on whose shoulders you stand, the people who made it possible for you to be here today, the people who gave you a second chance. The true test of your own leadership comes in many forms, and it is time for you to let the course of human history flow through you and not end with you. Weak or strong, we are in this together. Use your power and your leadership to help others who cannot help themselves. And never remain silent. Said Dr. King, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And for each of you graduates today, I hope you get rich. I hope you get very powerful. And I hope that you get everything you have worked so hard to earn today. And I hope you have the opportunity to make a difference in the lives of those who can do nothing for you. You do unto others as others have already done unto you. I wish you well, and I thank you for your time.